Please rise in body or spirit, and let's open with Lo, the Earth Awakes Again. You can follow it on the screen above, or you can turn to number 61 in the gray hymnal, but please sing with gusto.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Bob Muir. I'm your celebrant this morning. I see you're all about an hour early. Clock has not been reset. Welcome everyone, whoever you are, wherever you come from, younger or older, newcomer or old-timer, whatever your beliefs, you're welcome to join us on the path. And let us also welcome the return of Reverend Craig Morrow, who many of you know. He's serving as our minister and homilist this morning. Now, please join me in saying our affirmation. Love is our doctrine. Compassion is our way. Here we seek to create a joyful home for free religious exploration, build a community of caring fellowship, nurture the hopes, and serve the needs of our world.
Slowly on the ground. His work is almost over. It won't be long and he won't be around. I love my Father. He could use some mercy now. Could use a little mercy now. He is a stranger to freedom. He's shackled to his fear and his doubts. The pain that he lives in is almost more than living will allow. I love my brother. He could use some mercy now. My church
Yes, thank you, Marcia. That song has meant a lot to me since I heard Willie Nelson sing it some time ago. I've been listening to Les Miserables this week, and Mercy is sung all the way through the musical. It's something to remember. So every Sunday we light 3 candles, 3 chalices, as a reminder of our connections with others. The first chalice is for our friends, members, and guests of the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Salem, ourselves. The second chalice is for our partner church and friends in Šibenfalva, Transylvania, Romania. And our third chalice is for our children and youth in religious education and all the children throughout the world. So please join me now in singing The Flame into Life.
Hello, it's your favorite shapeshifter. I'm not Molly, I'm Sarah.
He's got a story, did you know that?
You do. That's fine by me. But I just have a couple of announcements to make real quick. All right, so 2 announcements. We are having a parents' night out on Friday, the 17th. We're going to do it in the preschool LRE wing. So what it is from 5:30 to 8:30, you can drop your kids off. And we're gonna do like a movie, activities, games. We feed them, we tire them out, and then send them home to have a good nap for the evening. And also, we are going to do an Easter egg hunt for Easter. If any of you were there last year, you remember how many eggs, and yours truly stuffed them all by herself. So if we could get some volunteers to help me do that, because we're gonna have even more this year. So you can talk to myself or Miss Molly about that, and we can sign you up, and we can have an egg stuffing party. All right, and you have a story?
I have a story.
Beautiful.
And I'm gonna hold the book for him.
Yeah, now where are we gonna go with this, Rick? I
right
have, for the first time in my life, my very own page turner. My very own page turner, which is really lucky because I had a cactus accident a couple nights ago. A large barrel cactus fell on my hand, and I was embedded with spines, and it got right in the joint. So I've got a page turner. I think he's okay.
Yeah.
I think he'll do fine.
We're gonna
Okay.
ask the kid to come up.
Yeah, because he's gonna turn so you can see the pages. Now, how am I gonna see the pages?
All who are young at heart and want to join us up here for a story, why don't you come on up?
Or who just like Dr. Seuss.
Yeah. We're trying out a new author today, Dr. Seuss.
Now, how are we
He's a keeper.
Now, how are you going to do this so I can see it and we're going to see it? People who remember the Smothers Brothers might know this routine.
Yeah, I'll do this and you'll do that.
Oh, it sounds good. Okay. I don't like to brag, and I don't like to boast. But said Peter T. Hooper, but speaking of toast and speaking of kitchens and ketchup and cake and kettles and stoves and the stuff people bake, oh, we got a close one. Okay. Well, I don't like to brag, but I'm telling you, Liz, that speaking of cooks, I'm the best that there is. Why, only last Tuesday, when Mother was out, there's a boy who's talking to his sister right now. I really cooked something worth talking about. Show him those eggs. Here's the problem. Okay, problem set up. You see, I was sitting there resting my legs, and I happened to pick up a couple of eggs, and I sort of got thinking it's sort of a shame that scrambled eggs always taste always the same. And that's because ever since goodness knows when, they've always been made from the eggs of a hen. Just a plain common hen. What a dumb thing to use with all of the other fine eggs you could choose. Emus, robins. And so I decided that just for a change, I'd scramble a new kind of egg on the range, some fine, fancy eggs that no other cook cooks, like the eggs of a ruffle-necked Salamogooks. Got to show them that, Rick.
Oh, yeah. A raffle-neck Salamagooks, yeah.
Got that? Okay. A Salamogooks. Say, they should be good, so I went out and found some as quick as I could. And while I was lugging them back to the house, I happened to notice a tizzle-top grouse.
Tizzle-top grouse. Know your birds.
Know your birds. These are all real birds. in a tree down the street, and I knew from her looks that her egg and the egg of a Salamagooks ought to mix mighty well, ought to taste simply super when scrambled together by Peter T. Hooper. And I took those eggs home and I frizzled them up and I added some sugar, 2/3 of a cup, and a small pinch of pepper, and also a pound of horseradish sauce that was sitting around, and also some nuts, and I tasted the stuff, and it tasted quite fine, but not quite fine enough. To make the best scramble that's ever been made, a cook has to hook the best eggs ever laid. So I drove to the country, quite rather far out, and I studied the birds that were flitting about. I looked with great care at a mop-noodle finch, at a bald eagle, at a beagle-beaked, bald-headed grinch, and also I looked at a shade-roosting quail who was roosting right under a lassalack's tail. They got to see those. We all know the famous Oregon lassalack. And I looked at a spritz and a flannel-winged jay, but I just didn't stop. I kept right on my way because they didn't have eggs. They weren't laying that day. Good wait. Then suddenly, boy, up that hill a short space, birds, they were laying all over the place. Great, happy, gay families with uncles and cousins laying fine, strictly fresh eggs by the dozens. Why, I'd have a scramble more super than super. Scrambled egg super de duper de booper, special deluxe a la Peter T. Hooper. I picked out the eggs in a most careful way. I only picked those that I knew were grade A. I only took eggs from the very best fowls, so I didn't take eggs from the Twiddler Owls. Show them why.
The Twiddler Owls.
Don't
Their
expect,
eggs are not that good.
Don't expect anything, right? Because I knew that the eggs from those fellows who twiddle taste sort of like dust from inside a bass fiddle. I went for the kind that were mellow and sweet, and the world's sweetest eggs are the eggs of the queet, which is due to those very sweet trout which they eat. And those trout, well, they're sweet because they only eat wogs, and wogs, after all, are the world's sweetest frogs. And the reason they're sweet is whenever they lunch, it's always the world's sweetest bees that they munch. And the reason no bees can be sweeter than these, they only eat blossoms off beetle-nut trees. And these beetle-nut blossoms are sweeter than sweet, and that's why I nabbed several eggs from the queet. But I passed up the eggs of a bird called a strudel, who's sort of a stork, but with fur like a poodle.
I saw some coming in, yeah.
But they say that the eggs of this kind of a stork are gooey like glue, and they stick in your fork. And the yolks of these eggs, I am told, taste like fleece, and the whites taste like very old bicycle grease. The places I hiked to, the roads that I rambled to find the best eggs that have ever been scrambled. I hunted new birds along wild tangled trails, through gullies and gulches, down dingles and dales. I wiggled my way and I crawled and I crept through a forest of ferns that was 40 miles deep.
40 miles deep. We measured it.
Yeah. And I mushed through the brush till I found a fine quigger whose eggs are as big as a pinhead. No bigger. Then I went for the legs of a long-legger quong.
A long-legger quad.
Now this quong, well, she's built just a little bit wrong, for her legs are so terribly, terribly long that she has to lay eggs 20 feet in the air, and they drop with a plop to the ground from up there. So unless you can catch them before the eggs crash, you haven't got eggs, you've got long-legger hash. Eggs, I collected 302, but I needed still more, and I suddenly knew that the job was too big for one fellow to do, so I telegraphed north to some friends near Fazol, which is 10 miles or so just beyond the North Pole, and all of them jumped in their catamasside, which is sort of a boat made from sea leopard's hide, which they sailed out to sea to go looking for grice, which is sort of a bird which lays eggs on the ice, which they grab with a tool which is known as a squitch, because those eggs are too cold to be touched without which.
There they are, getting those eggs. Yeah.
Also good for picking up trash. And while they were sending those eggs, they got word of a bird that does something that's almost unheard of. It's hard to believe, but this bird called the pelf lays eggs that are 3 times as big as herself.
That's got to be painful.
How that pelf ever learned such a difficult trick, I never found out, but I found that egg quick, and I managed to get it down out of the nest and home to the kitchen along with the rest. But I didn't stop then, because I knew of some ducks by the name of the single-file Zumzumian zucks who stroll single file through the mountains of Zums, quite oddly enough with their eggs on their thumbs. And some fellows in Zums whom I happen to know just happened to capture 1,000 or so, and they wrapped up their eggs and mailed them by air, marked special delivery, handle with care.
A lot of eggs being mailed, yeah.
They're just two kids to eat, too. I need more helpers, and so for assistance, I called up a fellow named Ollie, long distance. And Ollie, as soon as he hung up the phone, picked up a small basket and started alone to climb the steep crags and the jags of Mount Struku to fetch me the egg of a Mount Struku cuckoo. Now, these mounted Struku cuckoos are rather small gals, but these Mount Struku cuckoos have lots of big pals. Uh-oh. They dive from the skies with wild cackling shrieks, and they jabbed at his legs, they stabbed at his cheeks, and they're yammering, clamoring, hammering beaks. But Ollie, brave Ollie, he fought his way through, and he sent me that egg as I knew he would do for my scrambled egg super de duper de booper special deluxe a la Peter T. Hooper. In the meanwhile, of course, I was keeping real busy collecting the eggs of the three-eyelashed Tizzy. They're quite hard to reach, so I rode on the top of a hammock, shimmick, snammock, schnapp. Gotta say that. Very useful when collecting birds, mostly in eastern Oregon. Then I found a great flock of southwest-facing cranes, and I guess they've got something that's wrong with their brains, for this kind of a crane, when she's guarding her nest, always stand facing precisely southwest. So to get at those eggs wasn't hard in the least. I came from behind, from precisely northeast. And I captured the egg of a grickly gractus, who lays them up high in a prickly cactus. Ouch! I can't look at that. I'm traumatized. Then I went for some ziffs. They're exactly like zuffs, but the ziffs live on cliffs and the zuffs live on bluffs. And seeing how bluffs are exactly like cliffs, it's mighty hard telling the zuffs from the ziffs. But I know that the egg that I got from the bluffs, if it wasn't the ziffs from the cliffs, was the zuffs. Now, I needed the egg of a moth-watching sneth, who's a bird who's so big she scares people to death. And this awful big bird, well, the reason they name her the moth-watching sneth is because that's how they tame her. She likes watching moths, sort of quiets her mind. And while she is watching, you sneak up behind you and yank out her eggs. So I got one, of course, with the help of some friends and a very fast horse.
Big egg.
If you want to get eggs you can't buy at a store, you have to do things never thought of before. Why, to get at the egg of one very small doff, you had to pry all of one mountaintop off. Then I heard of some birds who lay eggs, if you please, that taste like the air in the holes of Swiss cheese. And they live in big Zanzibar trees, so I ordered a treeful. The job was immense, but I needed those eggs and said, hang the expense. I still needed one more, and I saved it for last. The egg of the frightful, bombastic aghast. And that bird is so mean and that bird is so fast that I had to escape on Agilica Jast.
Agilica Jast?
Agilica Jast.
Yeah.
Yes. A fleet-footed beast who can run like a deer but looks sort of different. You steer him by ear. All through with the searching, all through with the looking. I had all I needed, and now for the cooking. I rushed to the kitchen, the place where I had stacked them. I rolled up my sleeves, I unpacked them and cracked them and shucked them and chucked them in 99 pans, and I mixed in some beans. I used 55 cans. I mixed in some ginger, 9 prunes, and 3 figs, and parsley, quite sparsely, just 22 sprigs. And my scramble was ready to go on the stove. Yeah. And you know how they tasted? They tasted just like, well, they tasted exactly just like scrambled egg super de duper de booper special deluxe a la Peter T. Hooper. That's the end.
We love Dr. Seuss. So if you'd like to form a love arch, and we will send our young ones out to their religious education program, and we'll continue on our service. So.
Now is our time for thinking of the special joys and the special concerns that come into our lives and come into the lives of people we do not know.
Good morning. I'm Eric Schumann from Lifelines Lay Ministry, and we're going to start with our joys and concerns this morning, of which we have 3. So the first is from Leslie and Bob Zeigen, who want to share once again this week their concern for their friend Chelsea, whose unborn baby has a very serious heart condition. The second is from Carrie Lynn Patterson, and it's about our friend and member Bonnie Hummel. Please keep Bonnie in your thoughts. She's been admitted to Salem Transitional Care. That's over on Boone Road next to Avamere. And I know they do accept visitors there, so you might want to call or visit her. I'm sure she would appreciate it because she's been pretty isolated for quite a long time. And we have a joy from Gloria Holland. I experienced the joy of hearing the orchestral piece, Radiance, written by our own Zachary Guluboff Davis and performed by the Sprague Camerata at Sprague Spring Concert. Zach wrote the music especially for this event, and it was magnificent. So congratulations, Zach, once again. Do we have another concern in the back there? Someone's raising their hand. No, I guess not. Okay. Lifelines Lay Ministry. We're a group of you. We've doubled our size in the past just few weeks. There are now 12 of us. You can identify some of us, the old members, by our lavender badges, but soon we're going to have some other ways you can identify us during the coffee hour as well. And we're a group of folks who are extending Reverend Rick's ministry by being available to people who are going through a particularly rough time in life. And you can reach us by calling the church, or you can email us at the email address that's on your screen behind me. You can also talk to us during the coffee hour. And finally, I wanted to mention that this Sunday is the Sunday for Compassionate Connections. If you're in need of some extra support this morning, you just want the fellowship of other people and human touch, just come forward here after the service. We'll be there for you for our monthly ritual of Compassionate Connections. One more that Bob has reminded me of, one more candle to celebrate those joys and those concerns that are unspoken.
Good morning. It's so nice to be here again. I think this is my 46th or 47th visit to the pulpit here. So I'm very happy to be here today. My reading is from the 15th century Indian poet Kabir. I don't know what kind of God we've been talking about, The caller calls in a loud voice to the Holy One at dusk. Why? Surely the Holy One is not deaf. He hears the delicate anklets that ring on the feet of an insect as it walks. Go over and over your beads, paint weird designs on your forehead, wear your hair matted, long, and ostentatious. But when deep inside you there is a loaded gun, how can you have God? Beautiful poem, isn't it? We get immediately what the poet is talking about, even if some of the details are unclear. But certain trained readers, by which I mean those who have been trained by others or trained themselves to feel insulted or harmed when they read anything that seems non-congratulatory about their identity group or about themselves, this lovely poem is a string full not of beads but of pointed challenges to what you might call spiritual virtue signaling. The caller who calls in a loud voice to the Holy One at dusk can be read as a muezzin calling Muslims to prayer from the minaret of a mosque. Worshippers with long dreadlocks and designs painted on their foreheads back in Kabir's India were probably Hindus. Almost every major religious tradition uses prayer beads, and I can imagine my great-aunt Philomena scowling and preparing to hurl one of her salty southern Italian curses at anyone who dared to insult her daily communications with the Mother of God via her string of beads and endless Ave Marias. Kabir was an equal opportunity seeker and an equal opportunity tweaker of cranky tendencies in religion and spirituality. Though raised in a poor family of Muslim weavers, he asked to study with a famous Hindu teacher. The teacher refused to listen to or initiate him as a disciple because that would involve physical contact. And this great master felt that he would be spiritually harmed by touching a Muslim. So one night, what do? Kabir lay on the steps of a temple while the teacher was praying inside. Coming out in the darkness, the teacher stepped on Kabir, who said, now that you've initiated me, you're going to have to teach me what you know. The guy went along with it. I think he really wanted to in the first place. And probably something in that experience rang a bell for the teacher. I know this was the first time that I've shared that poem by Kabir with this congregation. I'm guessing it's the first time that some of you have heard it, but I'm sure that most of you have heard Dr. Seuss's classic Scrambled Egg Super before, and that today is definitely not the first time that I've shared it with kids on a Sunday morning. Some years earlier, I had shared it in another church, carrying on with my reading and sermon, and then it was time to share our candles of joy and sorrow, which we did afterwards. A visitor, fringed jacket, blonde dreadlocks, and those silver mirror sunglasses that are rarely a good sign when they're worn indoors, lit a candle, and then fixed me fast with a gaze like that of the bombastic aghast, and told us how he wanted to be part of a church where people respect nature, not one where the minister teaches children to steal eggs from the nests of wild birds. He was serious, super serious. I waited for him to finish, projecting patience and calm, while at the same time part of me wished that I could hop on Angelica Jast, who would run like a deer and get me home fast while I steered him by ear. I'd just been attacked with a candle of smear. Was he seriously aghast at the story or just being bombastic? Did he really believe that there are real birds somewhere that lay eggs 3 times their own size? Or birds whose legs are so long that their eggs always break after dropping 20 feet? Or that Peter traveled the world to gather his eggs while his nest-robbing agents sent more from faraway deserts or 10 miles north of the North Pole to add to the first eggs he had in his bowl, and did all this while his pan was heating on the stove? Or is it possible that Dr. Seuss is sharing a world of imagination, a world of play, with what the mouth can say and the mind can find and sort and blend and scramble? Or maybe he was taking a gamble that someone else might join him in calling me out. Maybe they'd shout, "We must save the birds from egg-stealing turds like bad Reverend Morrow with his bad, hurtful words." If that's how he used his candle sharing, which is designed as a way to be ritually kind, who knows how he might picture our church on nastier platforms like Twitter or Yelp? I can't help but wonder, though I didn't go look. This fish has no wish to bite such a hook. I'm sorry for the silly rhyming and for just now mixing poultry with seafood at a time when so many of us are as serious about our diets as we are about many things. And seriously, I don't mean to suggest that these things are unimportant or that all of this seriousness just hatched yesterday out of some kind of weird bird's egg. Back to seafood, to 1978 and an all-school meeting at Starr King School for Religious Leadership in Berkeley, California, where so many ministers have prepared for service in Unitarian Universalist congregations. All school meetings were just that: students, faculty, administrators, and everyone who had a place and an interest in the school. Teddy, the custodian, was there, a black former middleweight boxer and a real contender, and jazz musician whose band Teddy and the All-Stars played at school parties, an upbeat ensemble that included Bob Kimball, our president, on clarinet. Bob wore other hats, just like Teddy did. Bob had been the student and close confidant of Paul Tillich, one of the 20th century's foremost theologians, and now served as the literary executor of Tillich's vast legacy of unpublished writings. He occasionally led classroom seminars, but the most difficult course at the school to get into and to navigate was his one-on-one tutorial in theology, where he might assign anything from one of Tillich's works to The Little Prince or Rollo May's Love and Will. He would tell the secretary, no calls. 1978, right? No cell phones. You'd go inside with him. He'd close the door, and the two of you would sit down together. He would talk, and you would listen. You would talk, and he would listen. Really listen. You would emerge 2 hours later holding what some lovingly called a Kimballgram, a few words on unlined paper written with different colored fine-tip marking pens. You would emerge sometimes shaken, sometimes shocked, but always supported. He once asked me if I was thinking of returning to what he saw as the endless horrors of India, just to avoid dealing with some unpleasantness in my life here. Once he wrote on my Kimballgram the words, "deepest compassion," though as a raider of wild bird nests, among my other cruel hobbies like fishing, I didn't and still don't really see myself that way. I hope there's something to it. Well, sorry, we were supposed to be in the middle of an all-school meeting, not my private tutorial. Bob was moving toward making a point about leadership, telling us about a dinner he'd had with several other seminary presidents at Spenger's, Berkeley's most famous seafood restaurant, out by the bay. He and these other illustrious heads of institutions had decided that before the main course they would start with a round of oysters. I think he meant raw and on the half shell. Anyway, he said, they arrived quickly and, quote, they were delicious. We all knew that now he was coming to his point and that this point would be a wonderful one about religious leadership, something that we all needed to know. Before he could get there, however, one student rose, flashed a look of fury around the room, and staged a walkout. A one-person walkout from an all-school meeting is quite noticeable at a school that only has 30-some students, like Stark King did back then. We soon learned that the walkout had been staged in protest of the mention of eating oysters. This student was a vegetarian, and this was the first that I'd heard about it, though some others had heard it before. The student certainly assumed that Bob had. What a monster he was for sharing his pleasure in eating the bodies of small animals that were technically still alive. It was the talk of the school for the next several days. I thought now that I had an answer to a question that had been on my mind since I first visited the school. There was a big tree right in front. A large root had lifted a slab of sidewalk, creating a tripping hazard and a difficult barrier for wheelchairs. That root had been carefully cut, and new cement had recently been poured. And then someone had written "murderers" in capital letters when the cement was fresh, plus an arrow pointing to the stump, to the root stump. Now I felt that I had a pretty good idea about who might have done it, though I couldn't be sure. But I do feel pretty sure that whoever wrote that word in the sidewalk, shaming the delicate work of the arborist and defacing the craftsmanship of the concrete finisher, thought that they were calling out an act of violence, of deliberate harm. The student who disrupted our meeting with that walkout was calling out violence against oysters, or at least thought that they were. And the visitor who disrupted our sharing of joys and sorrows thought that he was calling me out for teaching children to do violence, to harm birds by raiding their nests and scrambling their eggs. Hashtag Peter T. Cooper is a murderer. A recent New York Times science section featured a story that's now also the center of an award-winning documentary film about two men, Mohammed Saud and Nadim Shahzad, who've been devoting their lives and fortunes to the strange sounding project of rescuing kites in New Delhi from kites. The first kind of kite is a dark feathered raptor related to hawks and eagles, very common in North India. The second kind is the sort that's flown on a string and is named after such birds, really. Kite fighting is a centuries-old pastime in India, using strings that have been encrusted with sharp bits of broken glass. The idea is to fly your kite close to another one. Then, with a deft movement of your wrist, you cut through the string of your competitor. Off it goes in the wind, and you win. Great fun, but also dangerous in a dense city like New Delhi. About a dozen people are killed every year by sharp falling strings that whip around their necks, motorcyclists, rickshaw drivers, sometimes young children. Thousands of birds, especially those hawk-like kites, have also get their wings slashed. Mohammed and Nadim do their best to rescue as many as possible from real harm and what can be a slow and painful death. But now things get a little tricky. Kites are extremely common, like pigeons in other cities, dark-colored, handsome in a hawkish, but not, a hawkish way, but not colorfully pretty birds. There's another problem. Kites scavenge whatever they can from the city's garbage heaps, but they're basically meat eaters. There's a long-established charity bird hospital in Delhi that's run by Jains, a small minority religion that's little known outside of India, but very influential. Jainism was the first among Indian religions to develop the idea of ahimsa, or nonviolence, an idea that later spread among many Buddhists and Hindus. Observant Jains will watch their step carefully to avoid stepping on worms after rain, won't swat mosquitoes, and sometimes wear gauze masks to keep from inhaling even the smallest of insects. I don't think that I could ever maintain such a scrupulous nonviolent practice, though I can certainly respect the careful approach to life that encourages. But when Muhammad and Nadim tried bringing injured kites to Charity Bird Hospital, they were turned away. Hospital staff would not handle meat and so could not feed or otherwise care for the carnivorous birds. Nadim wondered when it came to creatures like birds, quote, "Why is there discrimination between vegetarian and non-vegetarian? Like most other Muslims, both men eat meat themselves, and Nadim says of the refusal, it hit us somewhere inside because we were non-vegetarian ourselves." I think it would hit me that way too. It's as if the strictly vegetarian bird hospital folks think that kites really shouldn't eat meat, as if they're doing something wrong by simply being raptors. Better that they should die. The brothers have become expert at caring for the injured birds themselves, though they lose quite a few of their patients. And I almost lost my patience a few days later when I read another story coming not from India, but from Pennsylvania. Margot, a 6-year-old girl with Down syndrome, had for some reason, or maybe for no reason, made a finger gun gesture at her teacher during a classroom session. And so instead of calling Margot's parents, the police had been summoned to her elementary school to respond to this threat of gun violence. Her mother wrote to the school board, quote, "I'm well aware that we live in a time when parents are concerned for their children's safety in school." She acknowledges the real harm, the horrific fear and suffering caused by school shootings like those at Sandy Hook Elementary and Marjorie Stoneman Douglas high schools. But then she continues, "But I also think our society and our schools across the country have overreacted with respect to perceived threats, resulting in even finger guns wielded by kindergartners being viewed as a cause to alert authorities and to cause confusion, fear, and shame in a child with mental and developmental challenges like those that Margot faces." Where do you think that we should locate any harm in this situation? In the child? In her finger? In her mom? The school? Or the police? What do all of these stories have in common? The visitor who disrupts a religious service to decry harm in an imaginative story about 2 children and some imaginary birds? The very real birds whose damaged bodies a bird hospital refuses to heal because these birds eat meat and so fail to follow a human religious prohibition? Disrupting a story that involves eating oysters as if someone had just forced a dozen raw ones down your throat, shell and all. Spoiling the work of a concrete finisher and charging an arborist with murder for trying to make a sidewalk safer because, yes, that involved cutting a live tree root. Peter T. Hooper speculates that southwest-facing cranes might have something wrong with their brains. I don't think I'm qualified to make such a diagnosis about people involved in any of these situations. But there's something going on here that I'm tempted to call nonviolence pursued in a bombastic manner that borders on violence. Harmful anti-harmfulness, or violent nonviolence maybe? I don't know. But to be honest, all of those feel a bit like fighting words, and I don't want to have a fight or to draft you into a war against anyone or anything. That's not our purpose here, or the purpose of any religion. I think our friend Kabir said it best 500 years ago. Go over and over your beads. Paint weird designs on your forehead. Wear your hair matted, long, and ostentatious. But when, deep inside you, there is a loaded gun, how can you have God? loaded gun, always ready to go off. Deep inside you, in your hearts, perhaps, or maybe your brains. Now, is there something that eggs, oysters, and even brains have in common? What would you say that something is? There are very important reasons why eggs and oysters both have shells and why brains have skulls. We could also say that there are reasons why shells have eggs or oysters, why skulls have brains, why nails have fingers and teeth have tongues and lips. Even vegetarian foods must be bitten and chewed if they're to be digested. Hard and soft are parts of a continuous natural whole. The interplay of hard and soft is essential for life, real life, in this very real world that we share with so many jostling creatures. "1,100 years before Kabir's time, someone in India wrote a book called the Chandogya Upanishad. Upanishad means simply sitting down next to someone and listening, really listening, like Bob Kimball used to do with students. Really listening while giving them the chance to speak. No rush, no urgency. You give them the time to begin and the time to finish, just like you'd wait for a bird to lay an egg or for that egg to hatch." This is from the Chandogya Upanishad. "In the beginning, all this was non-existent. Then it became existent. It grew. It turned into an egg. The egg lay for the period of a year. Then it broke open. Of the two halves of the eggshell, one half was of silver, the other of gold. That which was of silver became the earth, that which was of gold, heaven. What was the thick membrane of the white became the mountains. The thin membrane of the yolk became the mist and the clouds. The veins became the rivers, the fluid in the bladder, the ocean. And what was born of it was the sun. When it was born, shouts of hurrah rose together with all beings and all objects of desire. Therefore, at its rise and its every return, shouts of hurrah, together with all beings and all objects of desire, arise. The silver and gold halves of the shell, the thin membrane behind it, the yolk, the veins that tell us that the egg was fertilized, the clear white in the yolk, yes, all are precious. All are sacred. And so was the breaking and all that came after. The scrambled egg super that make up our world. We would never know that if we had stood up and walked out at the sound of the first crack. You'll notice that there's no mention of a cosmic chicken in the story of the cosmic egg. So you must be delighted now to know the answer to that old riddle about which came first. But seriously, I love the good cheer that we can hear in this reading. A cheer from 2,400 years ago that echoes the supportive cheer of joy at the birth of the Son, and then goes on echoing until this very day as we prepare to cheer again tomorrow. In a time when it's become common to call each other out or shout each other down, may we first sit down next to each other and hear each other through. Let people talk and let people finish. That's rarely, if ever, going to harm you. What we hear at first may sound like nothing but cracking and breaking, things pouring out and getting mixed up. But if you give the storyteller time for the whole thing to emerge, you might hear something that will make you shout, hurrah! something simply super, like what we were served by Peter T. Hooper. So may it be.
Thank you, Reverend Morrow. Given us a lot to think about. So let's take a few moments in silence to reflect on the thoughts we've just heard. And now is the time for the sharing of our gifts. We offer our gifts to support the work of this ministry and that of others serving our community. We help nourish the Salem community by giving non-perishable foods or money to the Marion Polk Food Share. And the basket is coming through the door now. I mean the wagon. These food items are collected in the little red wagon you see coming down the aisle. Also, each month, we share a portion of our plate offering with a local charity or program. This Sunday, the plate offering is shared with our partner church in Siemenfalli, Transylvania, Romania. And Eric will now tell us more about our partner church.
I'd like to make the radical assertion that history matters, specifically our Unitarian history. Unitarianism, you may already know, began in Transylvania and Poland in the 1500s, 1560 to be exact. And there are 60,000 Unitarians in Romania today, which is a little less than half of the total in the United States of America. We share many beliefs with our Transylvanian sisters and brothers, but their lifestyles are significantly different than ours. Most are agrarian. They live in villages and small towns, and I would speculate that the majority do not have university degrees. Our partner church relationship with Siemenfalli was established in 2002. There have been 4 trips to Transylvania, including 20 of our members, and 1 trip to Salem by the minister and his son from Romania. As Sarah Pickett reported last week, our congregation continues to aid our sister church with critical support of their infrastructure. Their building was constructed in the 1700s, and their congregation is 500 years old. Can you wrap that around your head? Hard to believe. The UU Partner Church Council, which oversaw and funded administrative costs, was dissolved by the UUA in 2021 due to financial reasons and other reasons they haven't disclosed. The UU International Office was also dissolved, and the UU presence at the United Nations ended as well. The only continuing presence we have at the UN is the International UU Women's Convocation, which met by Zoom with our Women's Alliance here at the church last week. Also last week, Jean Scherbeck from the Partner Church Council here and I met with Megan McLean, who was recently appointed director of the Partner Church program. We learned that during this transition, a number of UU congregations have terminated their partner church relationships with Romanian congregations. Not us. It's not going to happen. There were 2 pieces of good news. One is that the UUA is now funding 1 staff person to oversee the program. The other is a development which is the result of evolving technology. It's called a small group ministry. It's going to allow, for the very first time ever, members in Schiemann-Falva to be able to meet with us via Zoom, which has just this year added closed caption translation of the Hungarian language. That's just happened in the past few weeks. The possibilities for enriching our relationship with our partner church are exciting. It will allow many more of our members and friends to become part of this wonderful 21-year relationship. I would encourage you to join my husband Lauren and me in supporting Unitarians in Schiemann-Falva with your contributions to this month's Share the Plate offering.
And now, baskets are being passed through the congregation for those wishing to make a donation by cash or check for the work of these ministries. Checks should be made payable to UUCS. You may make offerings also on the Donate tab on our website, which is uusalem.org, not UUCS. I made that mistake a long time ago. Thank you for your gifts to this congregation and the world around us.
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and for you, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue and clouds of white, the bright blessed days, the dark sacred nights, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of the people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, "How do you do?" They're really saying, "I love you." I hear babies cry, I watch them grow. They'll learn so much more than I'll ever know, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yes, I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
Thank you again, Marcia. And doesn't music bring back memories? I remember watching Louis Armstrong sing that on the TV in 1965. I don't remember where I was, but I'll never forget how I felt that moment. Okay. On my, there she is. I was going to say on my script, Lorna Youngs is here to talk to us about the status of our Tending the Flame pledge drive. And she'll be followed by Tom Ellis. Okay, here you go.
Thank you very much. Well, we are completed our third week, and I'm a little disappointed to say that we're only halfway there. Well, less than halfway there. 46.6% of our goal has been achieved, and we only have 143,390 pledges in. So, you know, I think that procrastination has been a byword of this whole COVID time. You know, if you're locked up, you can just, do it tomorrow. But we're starting the budget, and we can't finish the budget until we know how much money we have. And let me tell you, we can't get anywhere with $143,000. So please, please, those of you who have not pledged, remember to do so. It's online, the weekly blast, gives you just click here, you go to the website, and there's underneath Tending Our Flame, there's another click here. It's really simple. Just click early, click often. And we have Tom Ellis here today, who, I think we have Tom Ellis here. There he is, who wants to talk a little bit about his experiences here at UUCS and what it means to him.
Thank you, Lorna, and hello, everybody. My wife Ann and I joined this congregation when we moved here to Salem in 2017. And prior to that, we had belonged to a UU congregation many years prior to that, prior to 2000, in Williamsburg, Virginia. And we loved that congregation when we first joined. It was a wonderful group of people. But then a schism developed. I won't go into the details about the schism. It coincided with the Bush's war with Iraq, and it was rooted in politics, but also in various other things that I won't bother you. But the point is, the schism very quickly got really ugly. And so finally, when we moved to Hampton in 2000, Hampton, Virginia, we decided we didn't want anything more to do with that. And so even though we loved the church, we just kind of had to let it go. And but when we came back because we immediately rejoined this church because, or joined this church, I should say, because my stepdaughter, Adele Moore, had just gone on and on about what a wonderful group of people it was and how much she had gotten out of it. And so naturally we came back, and it's the best decision I think we ever made, because it restored my faith in the idea that you can have people with a diversity of beliefs who don't judge each other because of their beliefs. You can also have a truly inspiring minister like Reverend Rick, who can keep us all, has this wonderful light touch that enables all of us to take ourselves a little bit less seriously. That unfortunately wasn't the case in Williamsburg. But above all, it's because I know Martin Luther King often spoke of what he called a beloved community, sort of as this goal, this ideal, that for him, of course, was reflected in the African American churches that had really rooted his civil rights campaign and made it a really powerful force nationwide. But a beloved community is an asymptotic goal, something you strive for continually, knowing you'll never entirely get there, but you want to get closer rather than farther away from it. And it's very closely related to what the Buddhists call Sangha. And the whole idea behind that is that people learn to develop a relationship that I always like to think of as being a little bit like a Mobius band. You know, a Mobius band, it looks like it's a circle that clearly divides the interior from the exterior, but that's ultimately an illusion. If you trace, because one end of it's twisted, I wish I had a picture of it, but I didn't bring it. because one end of it's twisted. When you run your hand around it, it starts on the inside, winds up on the outside, and then goes back to the inside. And so a Mebius band is what I like to think of as a community without boundaries, where on the one hand it offers the same kind of protection, the same kind of mutual understanding that any good community offers, but at the same time it's without boundaries. It doesn't draw any hard and fast distinction between us and them, because there really isn't any distinction between us here and the world outside. And when you find a beloved community, it is a priceless thing to have. But unfortunately, priceless things still cost money. Now, this is the most delightful, beloved community I have ever encountered in my whole life. It is a gem. It is something worth saving and keeping and sustaining. So again, I just want to join Lorna and everybody else in saying, I know I'm a terrible procrastinator too. I do it all the time. But still, the time comes when the beloved community that we all share needs our support. Please chip in. Thank you very much.
And I'm going to add my amen, Tom.
What's that?
Amen. Yeah, I believe in everything you said. And if you're afraid of pledging, remember, a pledge is only your best estimate of what you can give in the next year. It's not a legal commitment, so don't be afraid of it. But it's really important for the practical part of building a budget, because when it comes to voting in May, you'll be voting on a budget that has to be responsible. So we need that information from you. Now, we're at the point where we're going to be talking about next Sunday, I believe. Notable UU women in history. Our Gloria will be up here at the podium next week talking about notable women in UU history, and there are a bunch of them. I'm looking forward to hearing about it because this is Women's History Month. Eric was talking about history. I join him in that. History is critical to understanding who we are and, more importantly, where we're going. The other news of the community can be found on the website, in your newsletter, this week, or Chalice and Flame. If you're not already subscribing to that, contact the office and they'll add you. I also want to mention that today we're having a class, a very important class, in the Hanneman Hall, and we're also having an art show, so you can do both. You can multitask. The class is on the proposed changes to Article 2. Abstract, doesn't mean anything. Your principles and purposes are subject to change, and they are being reviewed, and changes are being proposed. Those changes, whatever they are, will be voted on by the General Assembly of all congregations this June, late June. So if you want to know what's going on, the class will help you do it. That's what it's there for. So please join us. Now, Reverend Morrow. I'm asking Reverend Morrow to assist in the extinguishing of the candles. As Reverend Morrow first lights the candle of social justice, may the flame never go out. And then we will extinguish the chalices, recalling where we are, where we come from, and remembering to carry our love, hope, and work into the world around us. Thank you.
Our closing hymn is Come and Go With Me, You can follow along on the screen up here, or you can turn to number, in the blue, little blue hymnal, the 1018. Harmony is invited. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land where I'm in love. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land where I'm found. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land where I'm found. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land where I'm found. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land where I'm found. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land where I'm found. There'll be singing in that land. There'll be singing in that land. There'll be singing in that land where I'm found. There'll be singing in that land. There'll be singing in that land. There'll be singing in that land where
Now please join me in saying our closing words. And join one another. May faith in the spirit of life, hope for the community of earth, and love for the sacred